It was a wild one last night in Kansas City, a game, if you were able to stay up for it, didn't end till about 12:15 Evansville time. And then it ended up with the Royals getting a win off of a sac fly that scores the winning run from third. We bring in now our buddy Andrew Vigliotti, co-founder of the Outside Pitch Sports Network, also a contributor to OutsidePitchMLB.com. He's on the Menard Studio hotline. Andrew, how's it going? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. Great to be on the show again.
Yeah, we appreciate the time. Before we dig into the World Series, I wanted to ask you about another story in baseball involving our hometown hero, as it were. Don Mattingly, born and raised right here in Evansville. Many people watched him play high school ball here, and then he goes on and plays for the Yankees, and we know what his career did after that. A lot of talk about him possibly landing that Marlins job, that there's a lot of interest in both sides. Is that the right fit for Don Mattingly?
No, because really that's where managers go to die, right? At this point, there's not a lot of success with managers going to Miami. I mean, you saw the general manager take control of the position at this point. They're kind of the laughingstock of the league at that with this kind of thing right now. So if I were Don Mattingly, I think he deserves a little bit better. You don't have to take the first job that is available. You can kind of, pick and choose, kind of similar to what Buck Showalter did. He was out of baseball for a couple years and really didn't kind of get back into it until he was ready, and he's with the Orioles, and that seems to be working out pretty well. So, Don, if you want to take the job, go for it. I caution you, though, that Miami is not the greatest organization to manage. There's a lot of changes there, periodically. Seems like more so they change managers like we change our underwear.
Is there any possibility or any chatter? Obviously, you're closer attached to baseball than we are. Is there any chatter at all that he could possibly end up in Washington? For some reason, I just feel that would work.
Well, yeah, obviously it's a much more talented team, than Miami. I mean, you can argue Miami definitely has some talent when Giancarlo Stanton and Jose Fernandez are healthy, but that's if they're ever healthy. But with the Washington Nationals, you have such a great pitching staff, although it looks like they might lose Doug Fister and Jordan Zimmerman this offseason. But they still have a great and talented team, and we saw what Matt Williams did in his first year, but then we saw him getting fired this past year and really disappointing season. But it always seems that Mattingly has the talent around him, but can't really come up in clutch time. So maybe, just maybe, the Nationals could be a fresh opportunity for him. I know everybody was trying to have him go back to the Yankees for some capacity position, but I don't think that timing is right either. I think he deserves another managerial opportunity. For him, it just needs to be the right one, and I think the Nationals would be a strong fit for him.
Well, and that's what when the story first broke last week that he and the Dodgers had decided that it was best for both sides to just go their separate ways, and we were talking at the time, at that point, San Diego had a vacancy, Seattle had a vacancy, and I know Seattle, I think, has settled on a manager there. Whether they've officially announced it or not, I can't recall. The Marlins, obviously, we knew that there was some interest there. They'd been talking about it since the early part of September, that if he became available, they wanted him. But the Washington Nationals were the one that Jimmy and I said, if you want a guy, if you want, the ability to go in and not necessarily have to start all over again, like I feel like you've got to do in Miami to some degree. They do have some young talent down there, but they just can't seem to get it all worked together. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Mattingly's that missing piece. But, yeah, it felt to me like for a guy that would like to certainly get a World Series ring as a manager, since he unfortunately never got one as a player, the Nationals would be the best landing spot for him. But to my knowledge, there's been no talk of the Nationals showing any interest in Mattingly, and it ultimately looks like he's going to end up going down to Miami.
Right, and I don't know if he is going to go down to Miami or not, but I know the Nationals have had chatters or have been linked to Bud Black, the former Padres manager, and Dusty Baker as well. So, we'll see if anything comes about with that. But, the Nationals' job is very attractive. I mean, sure, they definitely took a step back this year, and it was very disappointing. When you have Bryce Harper on the team, and you have the pitching staff in Steven Strasburg and Gio Gonzalez and Max Scherzer, that's a very attractive job to have. So anybody who can get that job, looks good for next year.
Let me stick one more question on that, and then we'll move on to the World Series. But when you mentioned Bryce Harper, a guy that a great baseball player, no doubt about that, and everybody knew it when he was coming in, but a guy that there's a little ego there, and we've seen him lose his cool a time or two there towards the end of the season. He and I forget the pitcher's name that he got into.
Jonathan Papelbon.
Papelbon, there you go, thank you. Got in a little altercation there. Do you, if you're the Nationals, do you have to go out and find a manager that understands what they're getting into as far as ego-wise with Bryce Harper, and a guy that can not necessarily control it, but deal with it properly?
I think that's sort of an unfair question to Bryce Harper. I think, obviously there's been some chatter, and there's somewhat of a reputation, regarding him, even dating back to his days in Hagerstown, where I'm very kind of close to when he started his professional career in the minor leagues for the Nationals. I think really we saw his breakout season this year. I think we believed it was going to happen in 2014, but injuries got in the way of him only playing 100 games. But he played in 153 games this year, 42 home runs, just shy of 100 RBIs, really kind of seeing his full potential. And we're really kind of seeing him grow. Remember, he played this year. This was his age 22 season. Mm-hmm. So there is still plenty of time for Bryce Harper to get better, if that's even a possibility. It's a scary thought, but, he is a guy who has a love for the game, a passion for the game, and, has that fire that I think everybody would want their star player to have. So, to me, I don't see any problem with the way Bryce Harper conducts himself on the field. I love it, and I think any manager would embrace it, any good manager, or especially a veteran manager like a Bud Black or a Dusty Baker, if they were to come in, one of them were to come in, I think they would know how to work with a guy like Bryce Harper. I think he's a fantastic stud player, and I love how he comes across on the field. I think it makes his teammates better, even though they have kind of a rough year.
Andrew Vigliotti, our guest, co-founder of the Outside Pitch Sports Network, also contributes to OutsidePitchMLB.com. It's Ford and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville 105.3, and online, ESPNEvansville.com. Let's get into the World Series Game 1. I know you're out in the Baltimore area, correct?
Yeah, more so Northern Virginia now,
okay.
But yes,
so
in
it
that
was,
vicinity.
That game wrapped up about 1:15 your time then. Were you able to stay? Did you manage to stay through the whole thing?
Honestly, I will be honest with you, no. I had stopped, I believe, at the end of the 11th inning just because you don't know how long the games are going to go.
Yeah.
And, I had to be up early.
Yeah.
So, there's just some things you kind of have to sacrifice. But, yeah, it was a fantastic game. I really kind of paid attention to it. I was going a little bit back and forth last night. But, Alex Gordon with that huge home run in the 9th inning and just really tying it up, coming up clutch. And Familia has been great this postseason for the New York Mets, and just the kind of the clutch gene of Alex Gordon. And he was out for much of the year, and really he's kind of been the guy, sort of like David Wright with the Mets. Alex Gordon's been with the team in Kansas City when they were struggling. This is a guy who deserves every opportunity to have a World Series championship, and he showed his, again, clutch gene and his will to win with his heroics in the 9th inning.
Well, Matt Harvey started on the mound last night for the Mets, and I think a lot of people, myself included, going into this series, and I still like the Mets to win this thing. I said it'd be in 5 games. Jimmy said 6. Maybe I'm off on my games, but I still like the Mets to win a little bit. But Harvey came out. They were so dominant against Chicago in the NLCS. Harvey pitches 6 innings, gives up 5 hits, 3 runs. The 1 home run, it counts against him, but it was the infield home run there at the bottom of the first that went against him. 2 strikeouts, a 4.5 ERA to end his night. Are we expecting too much out of this Mets pitching staff just based on what we've seen so far? Can that be expected to continue on through this series?
I think so. You have Jacob deGrom, I believe, or is it deGrom tonight?
Yes.
In the Garden Game 3?
Yes.
Yeah. So, you have deGrom, who's kind of taken over the ace role of the 3 guys this postseason. deGrom's just been fantastic. And I think if they can, even if they lose tonight, to be honest with you, I don't think they're out of it. You have the Mets going home, potentially, winning 2 or 3 games there. But I think the Mets get it done tonight. I think deGrom is the guy who would stop or prevent a losing streak from happening. I think we get this game tied up. The Mets were 3 outs away from winning it last night. This series is just going to be epic and fantastic to watch. I think the Mets get it done tonight, which gives them momentum going into games 3, 4, and 5 in New York in Citi Field. I think this has all the makings of going 7 games, but now I'm a little concerned about that simply because of Edison Volquez's status with the club. I mean, is he going to be pitching at all this series now with the passing of his father? I mean, what's the status with Edison Volquez? I'm not really sure what his status is for the rest of the series, and that could make an impact on the Royals. And if the Mets are able to win this game tonight, tie this up going into Citi Field, they're going to have the advantage with Syndergaard in Game 3, and even Steven Matz in Game 4. He's been pretty good this postseason, and if they really needed to, then you have Matt Harvey or DeGrom could pitch in a Game 5 scenario. So I definitely like the Mets in this series. I think they win in 6 at this point, even with the Royals winning last night.
Well, Cueto goes to the mound for Kansas City. They brought him over from Cincinnati in the trade deadline. We've seen a little bit of everything from Johnny Cueto. He's pitched well. Then he's Toronto shelled him, and enough that the fans chanted they wanted more Cueto. Bring Johnny back out. We love him. But which Cueto do we get tonight, do you think?
Well, I think he's used to National League pitching too, and I think that will help him. I expect to see a very strong Cueto. I think throughout this series we're going to have great pitching matchups, and I don't really expect that to change over the course of this series. I expect a good pitching duel tonight between DeGrom and Cueto, and I expect this to be a low-scoring game. And really it's going to come down to who gets that clutch hit in the 9th inning or in the 8th inning, and really could come down to the bullpens as well, late in the game.
So with the game going as long as it did last night, how big of and I know the game, it's not like they're turning around and playing a day game. Does that have much of an effect on both these bullpens going into tonight's game?
Well, I think you saw a little strategic approach by Ned Yost last night with Wade Davis. I mean, he didn't really allow Wade Davis to go any farther into the games in extra innings. I think he only went 1 inning simply because, he had to be concerned about Game 2 if Wade Davis is needed again, so out of the bullpen. So, I feel like there is something to it, but at this point of the year, it really doesn't matter because you're at the World Series. This is what you play for. But, yes, it would be beneficial for both teams if you have your starters, particularly DeGrom and Cueto, go deep into the game tonight to save the bullpen. Of course, you get a night off travel day the next day. So if the starters can go deep tonight, I think we're back to square one.
Andrew Vigliotti, our guest, co-founder of the Outside Pitch Sports Network, contributor to OutsidePitchMLB.com. It's Ford and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville 105.3 and online, ESPNEvansville.com. We've seen, and we've talked to you in the past, Andrew, and I know before the season got started, there was some talk about some of the rule changes to baseball to help speed things up a little bit because there's this perception that baseball is a very slow-paced game. And having talked to you in the past, I know that you enjoy the game as it is. You don't want to see pitch counts or pitch clocks or any of that. Not pitch counts, but pitch clocks and that kind of stuff. But we've seen now in the ALCS, and then we see last night as that game wraps up with the sacrifice fly by Hosmer, bat flipping has become kind of front and center with baseball. Just some thoughts from you. I mean, is it just depends on the situation? Are you cool with it from somebody who's enjoyed the game for so long, or is there a time and a place for it?
Well, I guess it depends on which side you're on. If you're on, let's take, for example, Jose Bautista against the Rangers in the division series. If you're on Toronto's side, you're going to love it because it ends up you tying the game or having a clutch moment, or in this case, a 3-run homer, giving the Jays the advantage. But if you're on the Rangers side, I think you still have to be cognizant of the game situation and kind of the unwritten rules of the game of baseball. And I can tell you this, if my team is the Atlanta Braves, if my Braves were in that situation, which plenty of times I understand the Braves situation in the postseason results in a loss, I wouldn't have been very happy. So, I mean, at this point, I guess it really depends on which side you're on. I'm more so, from an outsider perspective, okay with it, but I definitely understand any gripes the opposing team or players would have with it, and maybe next year we'll see the Rangers retaliate a little bit against Bautista. Obviously the MLB players tend to have long memories. So we'll see if anything comes about it next season.
So you're saying a full 9 months from now, Bautista takes one off the chin the first time he sees the Rangers, huh?
I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me just because of the history of the game, and it's not like it's the NFL here. I mean, baseball players are sensitive. Okay, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it's always been. And really, there's no harm in it to me, as long as it gets handled appropriately. Bautista doesn't get drilled in the head or anything. I think it'll get settled. I think the team settle it just fine. And if that were to happen, I wouldn't be surprised. But that's just the way the baseball game works.
Appreciate the time, as always, Andrew Vigliotti, contributor to OutsidePitchMLB.com, also co-founder of the Outside Pitch Sports Network. You can find him on Twitter at OPSN_MLB. Always good stuff. Enjoy the rest of the series, Andrew. We appreciate the time as always.
All righty. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
All right. Thanks. Take
Andrew.
care.